Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. So reading from Our Family Business, The Great Art of Distributing Srila Prabhupada's Books. Srila Prabhupada notes this fact in a letter written on April 15, 1973 to disciples distributing his books. My dear boys and girls, you are working so hard for broadcasting the glories of Lord Krishna's lotus feet, and thus my Guru Maharaj will be so pleased upon you. Certainly, my Guru Maharaj will bestow his blessings 1,000 times more than me, and that is my satisfaction. Fourth, Srila Prabhupada's books infuse Krishna's blessings into the hearts of billions of downtrodden people in the world, a point endorsed by him in many letters, such as this one, written to Hridayananda Maharaj on December 21st, 1974. Please print as many books as possible. This is my real pleasure. By printing these books of our Krishna conscious philosophy in so many different languages, we can actually inject our movement into the masses of persons all over the world, especially there in the Western countries. Finally, those who distribute Srila Prabhupada's books bring in funds with which to maintain and expand the Krishna consciousness movement, as well as to bestow immense spiritual benefits on those who donate their hard-earned money in exchange for the books. In his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 5.24.18, Srila Prabhupada confirms this spiritual principle. Shishikodayatai Mahapurusha Shiki Jai. By donating all his possessions to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bali Maharaj became a successful devotee and got everything back again with the blessings of the Lord. Similarly, those who give contributions to expand the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement and to accomplish its objectives will never be losers. They will get their wealth back with the blessings of Lord Krishna. Srila Prabhupada again asserts this principle in his purport to Bhagavad Gita 12.10. There he writes that one who voluntarily serves the cause of Krishna consciousness, which includes helping with the publication of Krishna conscious literature, rises to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. The point is that distributing Srila Prabhupada's transcendental books is good for those who distribute them, those who give their money to purchase them, and for all those who invest their time in reading them. Stephen Covey, author of the best-selling 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, declares that exceptionally effective people work only for causes that benefit everyone. He calls this philosophy win-win, a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit in all human interactions. Srila Prabhupada's transcendental plot is a natural win-win venture that results in mutual benefit to the BBT, to ISKCON and its book distributors, and to the recipients of Srila Prabhupada's books wherever they are sold. Srila Prabhupada worked tirelessly with single-pointed attention to realize his transcendental plot, a historical fact verified by his constant writing and speaking about his plan to his disciples. He also displayed his staunch faith in this plot through his personal example. He supported himself by distributing his own books during his first year in America, and later nourished infant ISKCON as it grew into a healthy childhood from the worldwide sales of his books. Srila Prabhupada's transcendental book distribution key. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18. Text number 14. Yatai hikam mushmika kama lampata yatai kikashu yatai kikam mushmika kama lampata yatai hikam mushmika kama lampata Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Shankita Vidwan Kukalevaratiyayad Shanketa Vidwan Kukalevaratiyayad Shanketa Vidwan Kukalevaratiyayad Yas Tasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Yastasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Yastasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Yataihi Kamushmika Kamalam Pata Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Shanketa Vidvan Kukalevaratiyayad Yastasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Yataihi Kamushmika Kamalam Pata Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Shanketa Vidvan Kukalevaratiyayad Yastasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Yataihi Kamushmika Kamalam Pata Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Shanketa Vidvan Kukalevaratiyayad Yastasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Yataihi Kamushmika Kamalam Pata Suteshu Dareshu Daneshu Chintayan Shanketa Vidvan Kukalevaratiyayad Yastasya Yatna Shrama Eva Kevalam Amushmika in the expected future life. Kamalampata, a person who is very attached to lusty desires for bodily enjoyment. Suteshu, children. Dareshu, wife. Daneshu, wealth. Chintayan, thinking about. meditator is afraid. Vidwan, a person advanced in spiritual knowledge. Who kalevara of this body, which is full of stool and urine. Atyayat, because of loss. Ya, anyone. Tasya, his. Yatna, endeavors. Shrama, a waste of time and energy. Eva, certainly. Kevalam, only. Translation of Materialists are generally very attached to their present bodily comforts and to the bodily comforts they expect in the future. Therefore, they are always absorbed in thoughts of their wives, children, and wealth, and are afraid of giving up their bodies, which are full of stool and urine. If a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, however, is also afraid of giving up his body, what is the use of his having labored to study the Shastras? It was simply a waste of time. 4. At the time of death, a materialist thinks of his wife and children. He is absorbed in thinking of how they will live and who will take care of them after he leaves. Consequently, he is never prepared to give up his body. Rather, he wants to continue to live in his body, to serve his society, family, friends, and so on. Therefore, by practicing the mystic yoga system, one must become detached from bodily relationships. If, despite practicing bhakti yoga and studying all the Vedic literature, one is afraid of giving up his bad body, which is the cause of all his suffering, what is the use of his attempts to advance in spiritual life? The secret of success in practicing yoga is to become free from bodily attachments. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Deha smriti nahi yara samsara bandhana kahantara. One whose practice has freed him from the anxieties of bodily needs is no longer in conditional life. Such a person is freed from conditional bondage. A person in Krishna consciousness must fully discharge his devotional duties without material attachment. Then his liberation is guaranteed. Om Adhyana Gnanasya Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Sahagana Raghunatha Bhutam Sajivam Sadhutam Savadutam Parijana Sevitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shirada Krishna Prana Krishna Karu Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tata Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vachakalpatarubhyascha Srivasudubhyayocha Patitanam Bhavibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Gaura Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam bhagavata bhagavate giri patra Shri Guru Devi Translation. Materialists are generally very attached to their present bodily comforts and to the bodily comforts they expect in the future. Therefore, they are always absorbed in thoughts of their wives, children, and wealth, and are afraid of giving up their bodies, which are full of stool and urine. If a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, however, is also afraid of giving up his body, what is the use of his having labored to study the Shastras. It was simply a waste of time. So the identification, whatever we think we are, whoever we think we are, is such a crucial point in our life, because according to our identification, we will have different priorities, we will have different aspirations in life, and it kind of pervades all different aspects in our life, in our work, in our relationships, and our goals. Therefore, scripture emphasizes and teaches is actually one of the first and most important lessons in spiritual life is to find our identity, and then on the basis of that, everything gets built. And without spiritual knowledge, naturally, what happens, we identify without understanding or without conscious effort. As soon as we are born, there's like our parents are waving at us, and we watch in the mirror, and we do so many things that makes us to come to realization that we are this body, that we are this physical substance body. But even as we progress in life, and even scientifically, we understand now that we are more, and then this body, there is also emotional side. There's a physical body, there is emotional body, and scriptures teach us that we also are spiritual beings. We have a spiritual body. So if we only focus on our physical existence and we don't understand on our emotional existence, but to speak about spiritual existence, that's gonna bring a lot of problems. And we can see in the modern society, the understanding is coming more that our mental or emotional body is very important. And if you don't look after it or the needs of that emotional and mental body, there's going to be various types of problems. And somehow or another, we created now a society that has neglected their emotional and mental needs for a long time. And therefore, mental health issues are so much prominent in the world. So the problems and the challenges that manifest, like even for physical body, if we neglect our physical body, if you don't look after it properly, there's going to be some physical problem in due course of time that manifests in the physical diseases, like a weakness and so many other physical challenges that can manifest if you don't look, if you don't eat properly, if you don't have a sufficient physical activity in our life, there's going to be in due course of time some physical problem. And also, if we neglect our emotional side and mental well-being, there's going to be some problem as well. And while people used to live a quite natural way of life, often these things, when we live a pure and healthy, natural way of life in a community, a lot of those needs are addressed almost like automatically. You're physically active, you're doing a lot of things, you're working, you have a healthy relationships, you're living in a community with a family. So a lot of those things get addressed as a part of our life. But our lives has become so unnatural in this age of Kali, which translates as an age of quarrel, hypocrisy, and so many misunderstandings. So this unnatural way of life it brings a lot of neglect on the physical part and emotional part. People neglect their mental health, their relationships are poor, they insult one another, they don't deal in families or communities that kind of support each other. So therefore, it manifests in many physical, emotional, and mental problems, and also the childhood as well. The first 5 years of a child's life is so significant, and if that is also not giving sufficient care and support, that also manifests in various challenges. So therefore, if we understand, okay, we have this physical existence, we have this body, and we have to take care of it, and also we have emotional existence, and also is often now, like in the companies and businesses, the HR, human resource department, is considered like a most important department because uh, there's understanding growing that is not just productivity, but also we need to take care of people. If the people and emotional side are taken care of, they are more productive, they are more loyal, they're more inspired, they work better, the relationships are better, the teamwork is better, and etc. So that comes from understanding or more understanding that the emotional side is there as well. So this identifications, whether we are physical or emotional body, brings certain priorities and brings a certain care in our life. Then we can function better in a better ways. However, we also have a spiritual side, and the spirit soul. This is what we are, and as mentioned, this is the first lesson, or the first question is who we are, and the first answer to that question is that beyond physical and emotional body, we're actually spirit, and and the main symptom of spirit is consciousness. That we understand that we are spirit by the presence of consciousness. And when the spirit leaves the body, then the body is dead. So, what is the nature of that spirit? So, there's many, of course, teachings there, uh, but a few fundamental points is that spirit is eternal. We understand scientifically that energy is never destroyed, but there is also different types of energy. That Parasya Shakti Vidaya Shruyate, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is got unlimited energies, and Spirit Soul is one of those energies. The source of everything is Krishna or Supreme Lord, or there are many different ways how that Supreme is called in the different traditions. We call Krishna, all attractive one, and one of his energies is Spirit Soul, the soul. And because Krishna is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge, so the nature of the soul that it is also eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. So because of this physical identification, we think that taking care of body and giving the pleasure to the body is the ultimate goal. Or if we on a bit higher platform, we understand we're emotional beings, so taking our various emotional needs is the ultimate goal. But if we neglect the needs of the soul, if we don't understand the needs of the soul, no matter how successful we are in taking care of our physical body or mental state, even if we solve all the mental problems in the world and start living this very healthy and emotionally fulfilling life, there will still be something lacking. Because if we don't understand that we are spirit soul and neglect those needs, then there's going to be lack of fulfillment because we're neglecting those needs. And as you mentioned, if you neglect a certain needs of the self, there is going to be a problem sooner or later. So due to body identification, there's a few things that come with it. First is that his first identification comes is that we are this body. Together with that, it comes that we are belonging to a certain nation. And therefore with that belonging to a certain nation, then there is a various types of racism and various types of disrespect and various types of conceptions that we look at each other in a different way according to the skin color, according to the race, according to the part of the world that we are born. And this actually racism is foundational principle that is coming from bodily identity, that we think that we are this body. So there are actually two different aspects of bodily identification. One is called I-ness, and another thing is called minus. Just to translate it in a crude way. So I-ness is that, I am this body, and this is all about me, and I want this body to be happy. I want to just feed this body in this kind of center of the world. This is called misidentification or false ego, and makes us think that this is all about me and what I can get in this world. I mean, this is speaking in an extreme way, but this is where it leads to, not necessarily that people are just completely selfish and it's all about them. But that bodily identification leads towards that direction more and more and more. As it increases, the more it becomes self-centered. And so that is I-ness. And the minus, then whatever is in relationship with this body is about, again, me, to give me comfort, to give me pleasure, to give me satisfaction, to give me fulfillment. So even if people have these relationships as mentioned in the purport, wife, children, etc., often there is a tendency to put oneself in the center in all that situation. That all those people that live with me and etc. is there to fulfill my needs, and so is not there to serve, is not necessarily there to help them to grow, but actually is what I can get, and what kind of fulfillment I get from this. And of course, as people have children and etc., we are forced to put oneself out of the center and then start caring for this other beings that manifest in our life, like children and wife and husband and so forth. But still, if we just serve just the physical body of those people around us, and we just serve, even if we serve emotional situation, but we neglect the soul, so and we don't have that understanding that we are spirit, and so we're neglecting our own spiritual needs, and we're neglecting spiritual needs of those around us. So we are also missing out of caring for them properly. So therefore, it is one of the most fundamental principles for our own self is to learn that we are spirit soul and what are the needs of the soul. And then we also need to understand and help others as well, see them as a spirit soul too. And that is the foundational principle of proper relationships. Because if we just treat other people as a physical body in relationship to ourselves, there is as mentioned, there's a tendency to see that this is for my gratification. So instead of looking, and it's a big problem in the modern day, instead of looking at others as persons, if you look at them just as a body, there's a tendency to see that this is for my gratification, this is for my pleasure, looking at other people's bodies as a vehicles for our own pleasure. And this is a very gross and mundane, materialistic mentality. But if you look at other persons beyond the body, this is actually a spirit soul with their desires, with their feelings, with their identity, with their character and their nature, then it changes everything. You don't discriminate anymore on a basis of race. You don't discriminate on a basis on age. we don't discriminate on a basis, of like wealth, nationality, skin color, and etc. So the spiritual identification solves unbelievable amount of problems that our modern society is facing, and so many people are facing identity crisis. Challenging so many various types of identities and concepts and roles that are there in the society for many centuries and been there. So people are challenging all that. And it is good to question, but at the same time, if you lose that identity, if you lose, understanding and how finding the right identity, it can be quite confusing and difficult and even disturbing times. So to find one's identity beyond physical and emotional body is such a powerful thing that addresses practically every single problem in a modern society. It's such a powerful thing. And Srila Prabhupada took so much trouble actually to teach this principle. There's a number of devotees say they were in this one arrival address in the United States where Prabhupada was saying to the devotees with this urgency and with this compassion, he says, please believe me, that you are not this body. And in order to come to this understanding, there is also methodology. Just like there is scientific methodology to understand, there's a microscope and there's to see the atoms, and there is also various molecules, and there is also certain particles you cannot even see. You can only understand that the certain particles are there by the effect they produce. So like electrons and protons, technically speaking, they haven't been seen. Even it's kind of painted in a certain way in the pictures, but actually nobody has seen them. But their presence are there, understood that their presence are there because of the effect that they produce. So therefore there is a methodology as well. It's not like a blind faith, okay, you're gonna just understand that I am not this body. But it's actually, there is a methodology to realize that. And it is described in this age, the most powerful spiritual technology for understanding and coming to that awareness that we are spirit is chanting the names of the Supreme of God. And there are, of course, many, many names of God, but specifically in the Vedic literature, it is very much emphasized and encouraged to chant this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Hare. Simply with this very simple and joyful, you can see there's a number of ways to chant, chanting on beats, chanting in a kirtan, in a group, and dancing is described as simply by doing this joyful, happy activity. It raises our consciousness and purifies our hearts and gives that higher vision and understanding and the practical realization that we are actually not this body. And this is the most fundamental principle to study and understand in the scripture. And it's described that if after labored studying, if you still are afraid very much of losing this body, and afraid of that, then we have missed the whole point. So there has to be a realization of our studying, that it has to lead into a practical realization that we are not this body, we are spirit. Of course, sometimes in some misunderstanding of the teachings, it says that if you're not this body, then it's okay, to explode and kill or etc. in so-called in the name of religion, but that is misunderstanding. The life is sacred and shouldn't, be interfered and tampered with. But when our natural time of span expires, then we should have this understanding that it's not ending, it's not an end, it's just a transformation into another existence. Our soul is transferred according to our present life. It is transferred according to our consciousness that we acquired throughout our life, through our practices and our lifestyle. We become transferred to another body. However, if we, at the time of death, if we have a spiritual consciousness, then we become transferred in a spiritual world. We don't take another birth. So therefore, we have to be completely detached from matter and fully attached to spirit. So some of these people interpret, as we read in this translation, that one should not be attached to the family. Some of these people interpret that means that we are becoming cold and indifferent and to our family, but it's not like that. Detachment doesn't mean that there is no love. The love and care has to be there, but also we have to care beyond the physical body and build relationships on a platform of spirit soul. Then we can provide a proper care for others, not just physically, emotionally, but also spiritually, which means we give people transcendental knowledge. So according to their capacity to understand, of course, there's different levels of capacity of people to understand, but it is also our responsibility to help people spiritually, to help them in spiritual growth. Because no matter how much we achieve and how wonderful our relationships in this life, at the time of death, is all gone. And in the next life, we start in another family, in another situation, maybe in another nationality, maybe in a different country. And if we even hated, some people, and we remembered that, if our life is full of hatred, in the next life we may take birth among those people that we hated. And so therefore, the best way is to become detached and by cultivating the spiritual knowledge and develop love for Krishna and go back to him at the time of death. So are there any questions or comments on this? Yes.
There's a trend now for kids to jump from these very high buildings, and sometimes it's quite a long jump as well. And they seem to pride themselves on the fact that they're afraid, and they're not afraid to do it. So, that fear is based upon a misunderstanding that they're going to be okay, even if they die. It's not a problem for them. They're not aware that it is going to be a problem for them if they're not prepared for it. So, how would you explain to somebody that actually initially it is healthy to be afraid of death, and that what you're doing right now is based upon a misunderstanding?
Yeah, sometimes people kind of imagine that they are not afraid of death, but when they are in the near-death situation, it's a completely different ballgame. At one point, I also thought, as a young person, I'm not afraid of death at all. It's a big deal if I die. But I had this one near-death situation that, at least at that time, it seemed like it is a near-death situation, and this was a completely different thing. I was just started to worry, if I die, what my parents gonna think, what's gonna happen to this and that. It becomes completely different thing. So you have this psychological thing, I'm just not afraid of that, I'm just jumping from this building to this building, I'm fearless. But if they do break, their leg, or they do break something and they end up in the hospital or in that situation, then it's a completely different thing. So actually, so sometimes it's just like numbing yourself and having this kind of almost like an ignorant state that I'm actually not afraid, until you're truly faced with it, you realize that actually I am afraid to leave everything behind. And the more you're attached, to the more you will be afraid, the more you're attached to the body and the relationships of the body and the various types of possessions that you have. That on that physical identification level means you lose everything that you're attached to. You lose your physical body, you lose your possessions, you lose your relationships, etc. And that can be very, very fearful situation. And of course, many people may convince themselves, I'm just not attached to anything and I'm not afraid to die. But there is always a consequences of a certain understanding. So maybe they can, even if they convince themselves somehow that I'm not afraid at all, they will know what's going to be their next life. Yes.
There's an interesting experiment. Well, it's a test they do on people, and they put a screen. They just put his arm under the table, and then they have a rubber arm from his body. And then they start stroking it, and and then the guy starts. He can't even feel anything, but he's just identifying with that as his arm, and then massaging it nicely. And then they just hit it with a hammer, and immediately it goes up. So as soon as there's a affection and identification with an object, then there'll be equal proportional amount of disturbance and distress when it's taken away or damaged.
Yes. So the fear that remains there, and sometimes it gives that adrenaline because people are looking for some emotional experience. So that adrenaline comes while you're kind of risking your life, jumping from one thing to another. That gives you a certain kind of buzz. And certain kind of experience, so people can become attached to that too, to that buzz. But really, true platform of carelessness is to understand that we are spirit soul, and that even the body dies, the spirit soul remains and is transferred to another destination. But the important thing is depends that your destination depends how you live this life. If you live this life in a spiritual way, your destination can be going up or not, or getting a spiritual body in the next life. But if you live in a certain way, you may even lose a human form of life.
Thanks for asking. You see in the translation, emphasizes worldly comforts they expect in the future.
Mm-hmm.
How do we sort of, that I find the mind often dwells upon expectations of, some nice sense gratification, something happening in the future.
Mm.
And so, when it stops you even enjoying materially now, because you're thinking about feeling better in the future, but also impedes a lot of spiritualism, maybe we actually overcome this.
So that's really the challenge, and is confirmed in this specific verse, and also psychologists say that one of the highest pleasures is the expectation of it. Often, of course, when you do something for the first time, it may be matching your expectation, but the more you do something, then your expectation and what you really get starts differ. We have this, I'm going to have this amazing weekend, or the holidays, or this relationship, and etc. And you're just like, yes, it's just going to come, and it's going to be amazing, we're going to do this and that. You're just growing this expectation of enjoyment. And when it really comes, then either, if it matches our expectation, that's usually first few times. But the more you do it, is that what you really get, it just goes down and down and down and down. And therefore you can see people who go that path, and this is where one of the answers to your question is that intelligence has to come in. What is going to be the outcome? Any intelligent person who's doing something, making an investment in something, is looking what is going to be the outcome of that situation. And so if if your investment, goes down more and more and more, but you're going to get return from it, then you don't invest there. So you can see that if the path of sanctification and material comforts and etc., that you have to try in so many different ways, it's going to reach a certain saturation point, and then you have to change and do it in a different way, in a different, kind of environment, in a different situation, just to get the same amount, of gratification. So therefore, this is the path of physical and mental identification, is because the soul is spiritual by nature and is looking for bliss, is not going to get what is looking for on that physical and even on emotional platform, is looking for an ocean and is getting, just a certain degree of gratification. So that's why, the study of scripture and actually application, as we read, is not just the study, but actually the application, and also associating with people who have a realization that they are not this body and who are experiencing the transcendental bliss and happiness that comes from spiritual practices. If you associate with them, if we are sharpening our intelligence, and the second thing, if you're experiencing the higher taste. So these two things are crucial to actually cut that illusion that we're going to become materially happy at some point in our life. I'm not happy now, but if we're just going to get this house or this car or this relationship or this kind of situation in life, then we're going to be happy. So this, therefore, study of scripture is so crucial because it shows, that it's not going to be the case. And also, we can look around as well and see other people who are endeavoring in that field, and they are also not satisfied. So this we think, other people fail, but this illusion is that it's going to work for me. I'm going to achieve this in the course of time. So one is that intellectual conviction that needs to be sharpened every day, and seeing other people as well failing in their efforts. And the second thing is to experiencing higher taste and happiness from our spiritual practices. That is one of the most convincing things as well. So that means we apply that knowledge in our life and we get a result, that spiritual satisfaction and fulfillment comes from spiritual practices. Then our efforts, to on a physical and subtle platform, they only are there as much as necessary, but not more than that, because people tend to have our endeavor hoping to squeeze more and more on the physical and emotional platform. But the spiritual person only takes care as much as necessary, on a physical and health level, on our emotional level. And of course, emotional is also there for the spirit soul. The spirit soul is looking for that eternal, everlasting relationship that never ends. So that is the highest emotional fulfillment. So it's not that we just throw in, the baby with the bathwater, and that it's not that soul doesn't have any emotions. It's actually a very, very emotional being. The spirit soul is looking for love and relationship that never end. And that also gets fulfilled when we awaken our relationship with Krishna. That doesn't finish with the body, when the body is finished, but is there everlasting.
Just a couple of online comments I will read by Amon McManus. So, Amen. He says, "This is such a timely lesson and one that, if taught daily, would not lose relevance ever." And listening to your lesson, I am reminded of Srila Prabhupada's passion to distribute literature. His writing was the perfect antidote to the Kardashian culture we live in. I think education is vital.
So I missed the last sentence. What kind of
So I'm reminded of Srila Prabhupada's passion to distribute literature. His writing was the perfect antidote to the Kardashian culture we live in.
Kardashian
Kardashian celebrities.
Hmm?
Is this a families love and sees.
Right.
I think education is vital.
Yeah.
Sambandhagya.
Yes, and that is fundamental principle is to give shared transcendental knowledge. Because when we have a right understanding, we can put the right priorities in our life, and then we can fully achieve lasting happiness. And therefore, this is the best work to help the humanity is not just the physical level, because the body, then you get another body in the next life that goes through suffering, and the emotional and psychological support, but also giving people spiritual knowledge that then understand that they are spirit soul beyond this physical and subtle body, and then that helps to achieve a true everlasting happiness. So stop here. Grantarab Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Yeah.
Gaura Premanand.
Hari Bol. In case of Raghunatha Bhatta Prabhu ki.